Tov. Today's daf is daf Kuf Mem Vav in Baba Basra. Yesterday we talked about the Shushvinen, the reciprocal gifts that the Chassan gets from his best man and vice versa. Today we talk about another thing called Sivlonot, gifts. It's very common as we see here. Sholech, says the Mishnah, Sholech Sivlonot the base Chamiv. A man is a Chassan, got engaged to this girl, they had a Kedushin, and now he sends gifts to his father-in-law's house. And he sent him even a large amount of money, 100 times, like $10,000 worth of gifts. And he ate there. They had a suuda for the kedushin. Even if he ate a small amount, like $1 worth, he gave $10,000 worth of gifts, but he ate $1 worth. Ein nigvan. If the marriage then falls apart, example, he dies, she dies, or he reneges on the deal, he wants to give her a get now, he can't collect it because that was part of the wedding feast. He donated a lot of food, etc., a lot of gifts. Let's say he didn't eat there. If he didn't eat there, then he's entitled to get back, to reclaim all the gifts that he sent. Okay, the Gemara will talk about this. So that's the idea. If he sent gifts, for the meal. Shalach Sivlonos Merubin. Then the Mishnah goes on. If he sent a lot of gifts, and what a lot of gifts we mean, he sent gifts that were meant to be used after the marriage. He sent furniture, he sent valuables, all kinds of stuff that he says, this is not just for, to use while you're engaged. I'm sending you gifts in advance now for use in the house. Maybe a kitchen blender, whatever he sent to be used later on in the house. That she's going to eventually bring back into the common household when they get married. Those can be reclaimed. Those can be claimed back. All right, you can claim those back. Why? Because if the marriage falls apart, because those were only meant to be used in the house when they get married. After they get married, it's not to be used in her father's house. But a small amount doesn't have to mean a small amount or a large amount. Large amount means that he specified this is stuff to be used when we get married. And then the marriage falls apart, he's entitled to those back. But a small amount, meaning things that were going to be, as we'll see, that he said these are things to be used in your father's house while you're getting ready to get married. From the base of this, she's going to be used in her father's house. And those cannot be reclaimed if the marriage falls apart. Amarava. So Rava goes back to this point, and the Mishnah said that when he sent food and gifts, all kinds of, maybe wine, oil, all kinds of stuff that he sent for the wedding feast, for the engagement feast, if he ate a dinner's worth, if he ate the meal there with them, dafka dinner. If he ate less than a dinner, then the stuff goes back, right? In other words, then he can reclaim all that stuff. If the marriage then falls apart, he sent all these gifts in anticipation. He got there and he realized that they're going to give him a very small dowry, and he says, "I want out of this deal." Even if they got married, or even if there was already kedushin, he needs a get. But if they go out of the deal, either he walked out or one of them died, and he didn't eat even a dinner's worth of the meal, he's entitled to all the food that he sent back. Isn't that obvious? Dinner mitzvah. Mishnah said dinner. So it's not the same who I didn't. It just says even less than a dinner. If he ate it all at the meal, he's entitled to get all the food that he sent, all the gifts that he sent for the meal. For the engagement, he's entitled to all that back. That's normally amount. The normal amount that a person eats at a meal is a dinner's worth. So Stam said if he ate a meal there, that didn't mean dafka dinner. Kamashman, Rabbi teaches us that it is a dinner. Achot, so the Mishnah said Achotan if he ate. What about Shasan? What happens if he didn't eat anything there? He just drank. Or Hutnan, he sent the gifts. In other words, he was there. Shluchomai. What happens if he sent a shliach with the gift? It says he himself sent gifts and the marriage fell apart, he's entitled, either one of them died or he went back on the deal, he's entitled to them back. What happens if he didn't send the gifts himself? He didn't bring the gifts himself. He sent a messenger with them. Shom time, he says if he ate there in the Kala's house. Shagalomai, what happens if they sent him a meal? He didn't go all the way there. He sent the gifts, he sent by messenger the nice gifts, and they sent him, to his house a meal. Is that considered like he ate there and then he wouldn't be able to get back the gifts if the marriage fell apart? What's the halacha there? Tashma will bring a proof to me. I remember there was a story with a person Shishar Galabase Chamiv Me'ek Pronish Lakadish Yaim Mekadish Shemen. he sent 100 wagons worth of barrels of wine and barrels of oil, some silver and gold items. He sent a very nice gift on behalf of the engagement. Even nice fine silk. He was so joyful over the imminent marriage, and that he rode on his horse, and he rode there. And as he hadn't yet demounted, he was still on his horse or whatever it was at the doorway of the father-in-law. They greeted him with a nice cup of like a cup of tea. And some hot. They gave him a nice drink. And he drank it. Umeis died on the spot. Okay. Ravacha had this title, Sarabira, the officer of the capital. They brought this question to the rabbis when the bezin was in Usha. Amru, Sivlonos asun libolos, gifts that are made to be used up, enigma, that cannot be reclaimed. In other words, if it's food or flowers, thing that's going to be used up, that can't be reclaimed. She'ein asun libolos. If it's something that's more permanent, like like silver or gold items or jewelry, things like that are not going to be used up, those can be reclaimed. So that's what they told him as far as the gifts that he gave. He died. So can his family reclaim those things? Well, they told him if it's stuff that's not going to be used up, like silver, gold, items, clothing, it's not going to be used up. Those can be collected. Things that are going to be used up, not collected. Maybe not so sure about the silk. Maybe the silk would be used up. It's very fine. Maybe so number one, you see, even if he just drank, right? You see, he just drank. He didn't eat anything there. He just drank. They just gave him a cup of hot tea or whatever. And pardon?
He thinks it's customs. Yeah, really. It's a custom. Some financial matter.
Right, they're financial matters, but it could be that it was a custom that became halacha. That the halacha was based on these customs. The idea was also we'll see what was the understanding. What was the understanding? If the understanding was, this is what was the common understanding. You see, if he says, I'm sending you these gifts because we're going to use them in the house when we get married, and they don't get married, obviously he can get them back because that was like the deal. Question is, what's the understanding if he just sent gifts for the engagement party? He sent a big, a bouquet of chocolates and flowers and things like that for the engagement party. And then they broke it off. Is he entitled to get that back or not? So number one, if he ate something, we say that he can get something back. But he ate something, he can get everything back. That's the first rule. That is, he didn't even partake in it. If he didn't even sit down to eat with them, he wants everything back. That's like the understanding. What's the understanding today when people get divorced? Fortunately, it's a very common occurrence. What happens to the gifts that they receive? I've gone to people's weddings by the second wedding already. How much do I have to give? For the second wedding, I already gave a gift for the first wedding. These are legitimate questions. What's the common? Pardon?
2 for 1.
Yeah, 2 for 1. So that's the question. So here we see if he didn't partake in it, he's entitled to everything back. If he partook in the meal, at least at dinner's worth, then he meant to. So he partook in the meal. So whatever he sent for the meal or for the engagement party, that's gone. So when this question came up, so first of all, this story that this guy sent a tremendous amount of beautiful gifts, and he died right outside the house as he took a drink. So number one, you see that what he's entitled to get back, what he's not entitled to get back. He says even if he drank something, since he drank something, some of the stuff stays. It says. The stuff that's asui levels ain't cannot be collected. Why? Because he drank something. So drinking is like eating. That's what we say many times that achila k'shtia, shtia k'achila. Okay. What about shma min afil pachas medinner? All he had was a cup of tea. That would certainly be worth less than $1. And you see that even if he drank less than a dinner, this goes against Rava. Rava said it's got to eat a dinner. If he didn't have a dinner, he gets everything back. Here we see even if he had drank less than a dinner, the stuff that's going to be used up doesn't get back. I'm Rav Shapiro. So who says that he didn't crush a pearl? The Shavi Alphas was worth $1,000, but Vashkin drank it. In other words, it was common belief in those days that a pearl had some medicinal value. They would take a pearl and crush it and put it into the tea. So maybe they wanted to didn't help him. He died when he drank it. But who says that the cup of tea was not worth a zuz? So you can't prove anything there. What shagulo? He didn't come into the house to eat with them. So that shows that even if they sent to him the food, that's the same thing as him going there. It says no, maybe the doorway of the house he was at the doorway, he was about to hook up his demount and hook up his horse or whatever, or wagon. And no, maybe the doorway of the father-in-law is like the father-in-law's domain. It's like he ate there. So you can't prove anything to the questions. We had 3 questions. What happens if we drink? Yeah, drinking is good. What about shlucho? We didn't prove that, right? Well, we proved, what about shagalo? What about if they sent it to him? Well, you can't prove anything from there because over here, he did attend there. He just didn't get inside, but he was outside. So maybe that's like he attended the house itself. All right, so that's one thing. Iboil, another question. Now different ways of the gears is the on the side you see the riff of the Rav Shapiro. What a sivlanos. What happens if the gifts that he sent were animals, and by the time he's entitled them back, they're not going to be used up. The animals he's entitled to get them back if the marriage broke up, right? He sent these as gifts for the father-in-law, for the kala to be used in her house. What happens if they improve? For example, he sent goats or sheep, whatever, and they had babies. Does he get those back? So that's the pashut. The other gears that Rashbam says, brings up from the annals, this is we say that if he ate a dinner's worth, then even if he gave $10,000 worth of wedding gifts for the engagement party, he doesn't get that back. Okay, if he had a dinner's worth, but if he didn't have a dinner's worth, Rava said no. What happens if he had a half a dinner's worth? Do you proportionally figure out that he gets half of it back or not? That's a half, a third, a quarter, whatever. That's one question. That's one question. And then the other question is shvach sivlonos ma. What about the shvach? What about the improvements of it? Like, for example, he said he gave a goat and the goat had a kid. So does he get back the kid or not? So it's given the isnu, since if it's here, the goat is here, the day goes back in it's like it increased in the chassan's rishus and the groom's rishus, and therefore he gets it back. Let's say it was lost or stolen. Boy, she has to pay him for it. It was it increased in her rishus. In other words, if he brought a goat, let's say to shecht, I'm sending a goat now to shecht for Shabbos or a cow or whatever, and then it had a baby. So and then the marriage fell apart. He gets the goat or the cow back, right? Goat or the sheep or the goat back. What about if he had a baby? Do you say that since if the goat is here, he gets it back? So it like increased. It was his all along, and it increased in his rishus. It's his, and therefore he gets the kid back also. Or do you say no? Since if let's say the goat was lost or stolen, she has to pay for it. So why does she have to pay for it? Because it's considered rishus. So that question stands. Boy, Rav, another question. Sivlanos asuim bolos. You say over here, they said in the Usha they paskin that assets, gifts that are made to be used up, like food and things like that, flowers, whatever, things that are going to be used up, those don't have to be returned. But things, right, if they're going to be used, but things that are going to last, they have to be returned if the marriage breaks up. Boy, Rava, let's say they are going to be used up, but they haven't been used up yet. The marriage broke up right away. He died or she died, or he wanted to divorce her right away, and they haven't been consumed yet. These items that were made to be used up. What do you say there, Mao? Toshma. The same proof that we said before. They brought this question up. Ravacha Sarabi brought this up before the Chacham Be'usha. They said things that are made to be used up, those cannot be reclaimed by the Chassan. If it's not, Nigman. My love, it's mashma. If it's made to be used up, even if it hasn't been used up, they're not reclaimable. Says lo the bola. Maybe it's speaking about where they actually were used up. Instead of assuing both means and they were used up. So tashma, let's look at it from the end of our Mishnah. So and if it was only a small amount, meaning he said, this is stuff that you can be used in your father's house. This is not for our wedding, for our common apartment after we get married. So it's in her house. They can't. Those cannot be reclaimed. Those cannot be reclaimed. It's mashma. It's mashma that even if these things had not been used up, because it says stuff that we used up in the house, even though it's something presumably that would be used up. So Rashbam says over here, halfway down on the page, not quite halfway, not about 7, 8 lines down into the wide lines. Toshma, see the Rashbam there in the middle of the page. Toshma Savlonis Morton Sheshbam Di Beisavia. And even Mishla Machkamai, so the first case because they keep it. They said fine, they were used up. That she can use these items that were going to be used in her father's house. She can use them even though they're still here. As mashma, even though they could be used up, but they're not used up, she doesn't have to give it back. So if it's so, what do you see over here? That if it's only if they were actually used up, but if they weren't used up, she's entitled to keep them. I'm sorry, it's only if she's actually used up that she doesn't have to return them, right? But it's mashma, something that wasn't used up. Mashma wasn't used up. You would say otherwise, but here you see, Avimas should have said Sheina Suin Bolos that maybe the things are not the same as Oksha Suin Bolos Ubolu. Maybe they were used up. But why could the if presumably these were items that were made to be used up? And they weren't used up, and still you say she can keep them. She could still keep them. So it's mashma over here that she can keep them even if it wasn't used up yet. You don't say dafk if it was used up, then something that was used up, she doesn't have to go make good on that. It's not, but even something that was made to be used up but hadn't been used up yet, mashma she can keep them. So the Gemara, it's no proof from there. Back in the Gemara, my love even though they haven't been used up, she can keep them anyway, showing that even if it wasn't used up. No, I'm sorry, that was on the previous case. So we said here, basically, they can't be collected even though they haven't been used up yet, which shows that even if it hadn't been used up, she's entitled to keep it. Says Gemara, Rav will explain this. These are like hairnets or snoods. These are things that they don't get used up, but they're very small value and he's mochel them. That's why she's able to keep them. So you can't prove the question from there. So our question is this: something that's going to be used up, she doesn't have to return. What happens if it hasn't been used up yet? We can't prove that. Amar Vina Marav. Ma'aseh was a story with a person. Shishagar the Beis Chama of Yain Chalash. He sent to his father-in-law's house, meaning at the engagement party, new wine, v'shem chadash, new oil, fresh oil, clay peshtan, and linen garments, chadash, new ones, batzeres on shvuas. Set it on shvuas. Now, what's the point of that? My Kamash, what's the chiddush here? Boy, Sema, Chashi was Eretz Yisrael. Kamash, he's teaching us that Eretz Yisrael is so great that even at shvuas time, they already have fresh oil and fresh wine, even though in other countries it takes longer for those things to be harvested and produced. But here at Eretz Yisrael, it's even early. Boy, Sema, if he claims, let's say there's a fight after the marriage breaks up, and she claims that he didn't give her those things, and he says, I gave you those things on Shavuos. You might say, what do you mean, Shavuos? They couldn't have given that stuff new wine, new oil, then it wouldn't have been produced yet. Kamashma know that it's a valid argument. I'm going to read a Marav. 2 lines from the bottom of the page. There was a story with a man, Sha'amulo told him, Ishto Tetranasu, you got married. Do you realize that she has no sense of smell? She got a COVID shot, or she had COVID, whatever. She has no sense of smell. Now that's considered a mumsha b'seiser. If a man marries a woman and says, I'm marrying her on the condition that she has no hidden blemishes, and he finds a blemish, then it's no marriage at all. I married her on this condition, the condition, right? I mean, that she was free of blemishes, and she had blemishes, no marriage. But let's say he didn't make that condition. But it's assumed that a man doesn't want to marry somebody who has hidden blemishes. He found out about the blemish. He can divorce her he doesn't have to give her the ksuba. So here they told me, your wife has a blemish, she can't smell. So he tried to test her. He followed her when she was walking into a ruin there. He was walking through town, the boat, to check her. He said to her, hey, honey, I smell the smell. He had in his pocket a radish, a sharp radish. I smell the smell of a radish from the Galil, very strong smell. Some say, Rashbam says either he had a radish, some say that he had a date. So she answered him. Rashbam says, she respited him at derech tzchok. She realized, according to Rashbam, that he's trying to test her, right? So Rashbam says, right? She's trying to test her. So she gave back his, you know what? Man I'll advise somebody should give us those dates of Yericho, and I would eat that with it. Why? Because it's very common. Sometimes you have something very strong, pungent, and you want something sweet with it to, counter the taste, right? You have something, to give a simple example, you have salty chips or something, and you want a sweet drink to counter the salt. So here too, he says, so she answered him, oh, you got a radish there? I wish somebody would give me, and one of the fine dates of Yericho. Yericho was called Yericho Ir HaTmarim, the city of dates, right? And the Kosevis is a date. So he says that she said, "Oh, how somebody would give me a fine, some nice dates to go along with these radishes." All right. Whoever the story was, some say that that it wasn't a radish; it was really a date that she had, and that he had in his pocket, trying to test her. Anyway, Nafal Achorba, they never came out of there. Where she went through that ruin, the ruin collapsed on her mason. She died right then. He really was intent on divorcing her. Why was he checking her out? He was checking her out because he wanted to see if she fooled him and didn't tell him about that hidden blemish. And since he was checking her, he was planning on divorcing her. Ella Lebodka, Mason Isha, the halacha is that she doesn't inherit her. Rashbam goes through a riches over here. We've learned that a husband inherits his wife. If a wife dies, he's first in line to inherit her. Only if they're fully married. It's not speaking about an arusa. He doesn't inherit from arusa, only if he's married, right? It's only if they're fully married. So here she was married already. They said, you marry this woman, she can't smell. So he tried to test her because he was figuring that if he turns out that she can't smell, he will divorce her without a ksuba because it was a hidden blemish that she didn't tell him about. In any case, you see over here, since even though normally a husband inherits his wife, over here, once he decided he was going to divorce her, you can't, Rashbam brings down the Gemara in Gittin. And as when a man has decided already to divorce his wife, he's not entitled to a nichse muluk. He's not entitled either to his to inherit her. Interesting thing, because if you hold, Yushas Doraisa, but he didn't. But if he's intent on divorcing her already, it's like she's not his wife anymore. So we said, if it's a small amount, doesn't mean small amount. It means things that he said specifically. This is not for our marriage house once we get married, for our apartment. This is for stuff to use in your father's house. So it says over there that's not reclaimed. That's not claimed. He doesn't get that back if the marriage breaks up. Yosef, says the Gemara, Yosef Rabin Saba. It's not specifically going on in these last cases. It's telling you in general. Yosef Rabin Saba Kamed Rapapa. Rabin the elder said in front of Papa. Yosef would come and he said, Ben Shemesahi, Ben Shemesahu. If the marriage broke up because she died, or whether he died, or Hadahu, or he retracted, he wanted to go back out of the wedding, he wanted to divorce her. Sivlonos Hadre, the gifts that we talked about that he sent for the engagement party, those go back. Machala Mishtalo Hadre. In other words, gifts, like we said, gifts that will last, those he's entitled to get back. But the food, that's going to be used up, that doesn't go back. Hadre, but let's say she retracted. She wanted to get out of the wedding. He sent all this fancy smorgasbord, whatever. He sent all this food for the engagement party, and she took a look at him and said, "I want out of this." If she went back, even a bunch of vegetables, whatever, a bunch of vegetables, even that goes back. In other words, all the food, everything goes back. Presumes you'd have to pay the shamalan, and you assess them to make basar b'zol. Let's say they ate the food already, right? She or her father has to pay back for it. How much do you pay? You pay like the cheaper price. How much? If you sent meat, you don't take the most expensive price. You take the cheaper price. Ad kama b'zol. What's that? Ad tilsa, like we learned in other places. When you're not giving back the food itself, you're giving back the value of the food. You have to give back the price, the cheapest price, which would mean you deduct 1/3. Up to 1/3, you can deduct. If the meat normally goes for $10 a pound, you can give it at, you could get, and it had a pound, so you give $10 less 1/3. Back to our Shchiv, we discussed this many times before. Here's the basic Mishnah. Man on his deathbed wrote everything over to somebody else. He didn't have to actually write it. It's even if he didn't write it, he just said, I'm giving everything to Jimmy over here, and he left over something for himself. He didn't give him everything. He saved some karka for himself. We'll talk about what kolshu is in the Gemara. We'll see. Even Mataf, he kept some stuff for himself, meaning he said maybe he won't die. He understood that maybe he won't die. Matnaso kayamas. The matana is a good gift if Jim made a kinyan on it, even if the man survives and recovers from his illness, he was on his deathbed, but then he recovered. The gift is a gift. Why? Because since the Shchim Ra left some stuff for himself, he figured maybe he'll survive. If a man knew for sure that he was going to die, he'd give everything away. But a man always thinks maybe he's going to survive. So in a case like that, even though he gave everything away, but if he kept some stuff for himself, then the gift is a gift, assuming that the recipient made a kinyan. Lo shayar karkol. If he didn't leave anything over for himself, even if the person made a kinyan, right? The man said on his deathbed, he was dying, and he said, "Give me everything to Jimmy over here, his attendant." Right? He gave everything to his to the Filipino, everything to him, even if the guy made a kinyan, but then he recovered. The man recovered. Then we say that he didn't really mean to give it. And he was giving it only on the condition that he was going to die. That's the basic idea of Shchimura. And he didn't have to write anything. He just had to say it. As long as there's witnesses that he said it, they can dispute that he said it. Who is the author of this idea that we make an assessment? We figure we try to figure out what was his intent. We try to check what was his intent. What do you think he meant? Because he didn't say over here, he didn't just, I'm giving everything away. He gave everything away. Then we assume that he meant to give it away only because he died, because he was about to die. But if he didn't die, he wants it back. Who was the author of that idea? Amar Nachman, Shimon the Tanya, we had this before. A man had one son, and the son went overseas. And he heard Lo Aleinu that his son died. But Amad, since his son died, he had no other heirs, so he gave everything over to Jimmy. Then his son showed up. It's a gift because he gave it willingly. He wasn't dying. He just said, son's gone, so he gave everything over to Jimmy. He knew he had no chance of having other children, so he said, it's a very good. That's the Tanakama. No, his gift is not a gift. Why? Had he known, if he known that his son was alive, he only gave everything to Jimmy because he heard that his son died. Had he known that his son was alive, he wouldn't have given it away. So Shimon says, you look at the situation, you assess his intent. That's the idea of umdana. Even though it wasn't said, he didn't say, I'm giving it away because because his son had died. He didn't say, I'm giving it away on the condition. Everything was said, I'm giving it away on the condition that I don't have a son. If I have a son, I'm not giving it away. He didn't say that would be obvious. Here he just said he heard that his son died. He gave everything to Jimmy. We assume that he gave it away to Jimmy because he heard that his son died. Therefore, it was like a condition that wasn't explicitly stated. Rav Sheshes says no, it's not Rav Shimon Nasi, but rather it's Rav Shimon Shazuri. We found Rav Shimon Shazuri also looks at Umdana. The Tanya, Rishon Yom, they used to say Hayotz, a man was taken out in chains to be killed. V'amru, and he said, "Kiss forget lishti, write a get for my wife." Now, if the Goyim took him out, they were going to hang him or decapitate him or whatever. He was taken out in chains, and he said, "Write a get for his wife." He didn't say give a get to his wife. Right? You can appoint a shliach to write a get for his wife, but he said write it. He didn't say give it. Even though he said give it, even just said write it, that's enough, because obviously, why would he want to write it? Because he wanted to give it.
And the khutbah, we assume that he means to divorce her, even though he didn't say anything.
He didn't say no, but they told him. That was also obvious over there. Yeah,
they told him, but
no, but the fact that he tested her showed that was a real. That's a good question. Yeah. And when he tested her, that showed that he was saying, why did he have to test her in that roundabout way? If he meant to keep her, he says, "Oh, by the way, honey, you can't smell, I can't hear." If he would have said it like that, that's okay. Okay, you can't smell, I can't. The way she looks, he says that's all good, right? It's all good. You can't see, I can't hear. Fine, we have a good marriage. The fact that he tested her around right showed that it showed his intent. That's a good point. We'll see that in a second, that when it's something that's very, very obvious. So here, Shimon Nasi said in the case with the son and went overseas, he didn't say anything, but we assume, we check, we assume his intent was, since he didn't have a son, therefore he gave it away. And not like the Tanakama. Tanakama says, no, he gave it away. He gave it away. It's a good gift. He gave it away. And he wrote the guy a deed. And he said, here, you're getting all my assets. But Shemanasi says, since we assume that he only gave it away because he didn't have a son and his son really did live, it's not a gift. Sheshes talks about a different case. A man was taken out to be killed by the Goyim. And he said, write a get for his wife. They should write it and give it. Then they said, not only that, even if he was going on a sea-bound journey, he was going to sea. In those days, you went to sea, you didn't know if you were coming back. Going on a caravan through the desert, there were bandits there. These were very risky endeavors. even a case like that, and he wrote Kis Forget Lishti, we accept Shimon Shuzuri Amar, Afa Masuk, even if a person just is in light, he's in a dangerous situation. I'm Masuk, he's he's very sick. He's a Masuk, and he could Karav Lamisa, right? The Rashbam says Shadaitu, she has to be live Torah. Right, he's about to die. He says, write a get for his wife. Nobody was going to kill him, but he was in a sukkah, say he wanted to give a get to his wife, so she wouldn't fall. Even a case like that. So you see, Shimon Shuzuri also says, and then let's say he recovered, right? He recovered. So Shimon Shuzuri says, after Masukkim, even though he didn't say, he did die, but he didn't say give it. Since he didn't say give it, you assume that he meant to give it. That's the point. That's the assumption. That he said, write a get for his wife. He meant that you should give it. So Rav Nachman, why didn't Rav Nachman say like Rav Shimon Shuzuri? Why did he say it goes like Rav Shimon Nasya, who says in the case of the boy who went and he thought his son died? Why doesn't he say like Rav Shimon Shuzuri? He says, Shani Yosem Domer Kisva. He said, write it. Why would you write it if you're not going to give it? So that's more obvious. In other words, that's a well-grounded, assumption, because he said write a get for his wife. Obviously meant to write and give it. But in a case like Rav Shimon Nasya, where he didn't say anything about his son, he heard that his son died. That's why he wrote the get. Rav Sheshes my time lo mukim like Rav Shimon Nasya. Why don't Rav Sheshes like Rav Shimon Nasya? He says that's more obvious. He says that's a very obvious thing. That why do you write everything to Jimmy when he has a son? Because he thought that his son had died. But in either case, both Rav Shimon Shuzuri and Rav Shimon Nasya look at Umdanav, but Rav Shimon Nasya, you could argue and say, in the case of Shimon Shuzuri, at least he said give it. He says write a get. So he meant to write it and give it. But in the case of the son, he didn't say anything about the son. He just said, he knew his son was overseas and he heard that he died. And he wrote everything over. We assume that. We assume that's very Umdan. But he says that's too Umdan. He says that Shimon Nasya is very much more obvious than the case of write the get for his wife. Mantan Lahadatan Rabban. Who's the author of the following case of this case? This at the rabbi's learn a man was sick, he was on his bed, he was on his deathbed, or he was very sick. And they told him, who should we give your assets to? And he told them, I thought I had a son. Now that I don't have no son, I'm giving it over to Plony. Or he was sick in bed. Very seriously, who should we give Who should we give your assets to? I thought my wife was pregnant and I would have had a child. Now it turns out my wife is not pregnant. And then it turned out afterwards. So he gave it away. He said, I'm giving everything to Jim because thought he didn't have a son, or that his wife wasn't pregnant. And then it turned out, then he found out. He was informed they found afterwards that he has a son, or his wife is pregnant. Who is the author of it? Rav Shimon Nasya. That goes like Shimon Nasya of Lo Rabbanan, because the Rabbanan don't agree. The Rabbanan say you gave it away. He just he gave it away. He didn't say I'm giving it on the condition that I don't have a son. So I feel ten Rabbanan. This kid didn't go to Rabbanan. Doma shiny. It's different when he said I thought I didn't have a son, because when he said I thought I had a son, but I don't have one now. I thought I had a son. I thought my wife was pregnant. Now that I don't have one, it's like he's making a condition. What was your minute? Obviously, it's different there. The case of Shimon Nasya was talking about where his son went overseas. He heard that he died, and he just said, "I'm giving everything to Jim." He didn't say because his son died. He didn't say anything about that. There, if Shimon Nasya says, "You know what? It's still not a gift because you look at his situation." Over here in this case, when he said, "I thought I had a son. Now I don't have a son. I'm giving it to Jim." Right? Or I thought I was pregnant. Now she's not pregnant. I'm giving it to Jim. That's pretty obvious that he's only doing it. That's even the Rabbanan would be moda. Since he says, I thought I had a son, I don't have it, then that's obvious that he's only giving it because he thought his son had died or he didn't have a son. What was the havmina to say that it goes like Shimon Nasya like the Rabbanan isn't obvious? Mount is saying, sorry, who to commit. I might think he's simply mentioning his grief. He's saying, I once had a son, I don't have a son anymore, but he's not making it a condition. Kamash Malan, that's like a condition. He's giving it away only because he doesn't have a son. And then afterwards, he had a son, So it was like a condition, and it goes even the Rabbanan, not just Rav Shimon Nasya, even Rabbanan who say that normally if a man just gave it away because he heard his son died and he didn't mention anything about the son, that's not a condition, and it's a good gift. Here that the motive, it's like a condition because he said, I thought I had a son. Now that I don't have a son, I'm giving it all to Shimon. That's like a condition, and if the son actually turned up, he would be able to give it to the son, and the gift to Jim is not a gift. All right, we'll pick up here tomorrow. Mishem Amar of Zeira Amarav. More about Shchivei.
Possible distinction between those two cases that we're talking about is that in the
three cases. Which case? Yeah. Oh, the chorva you're talking, yeah.
Yeah, it's not a get, it's actually an annulment, it's mechastos, right?
No. It's only mekach if he made a condition. As Ram explains that. He made a condition, so I'm marrying her on the condition that there are no women. If though, it's not assumed. If she had an obvious mum and he married her, then nothing is assumed because he accepted her and he'd have to give her a ksuba. But if there was a hidden mum and a hidden mum that he couldn't know about, and he married her, so it's a marriage list because he didn't make a condition. He married her, but because she fooled him, he's entitled to divorce her without giving the ksuba, but you have to have a get. Rashbam explains that. Morning. Have a good day.